is the Glycine Airman, one of the most important pilot's watches of the Vietnam War era. Hell, in my opinion, this is one of the most important pilot's watches ever. And this is the Khe Sanh Air Base. Well, what remains of it anyway. And I'm here to talk about why a watch like this was such an important tool to pilots during the Vietnam War era. Khe Sanh is located here in the Central Highlands, right along the Lao border. It's at the end of Route 9, a strategically important route that ran all the way from Vietnam's coastline into Laos. And originally here, there was a 1,500 feet long French-built runway that the US extended to 3,900 feet. The Americans here built the runway out of aluminum matting, and it was a shit runway to land on. The environment here in the Central Highlands is horrible. It is blisteringly hot, and it rains a lot here in the Central Highlands.
One of the heaviest monsoons in Southeast Asia.
How would you compare it to other places that you've served in Vietnam?
Well, this is the worst I've been at. Most of the time you can't get anything done.
The rains here eroded the soil underneath the aluminum matting, preventing the runway from ever truly being flat. And the mats ripped apart, they tore during hard landings, and hard landings were common. The need for high-speed, high-rate of descent landings here was critical to survival. Just being stationed at a remote airbase like this is tough. Essentially a giant network of mud, bunkers and trenches. It was a complete gear-destroying environment, especially for watches.
Extreme heat thinned the lubricating oils,
and fine red dust worked its way into any moving mechanism. Shocks and vibration caused damage to the internals, and when the rains came, red dust turned to mud, and you better hope that your watch was waterproof or it wasn't going to survive. Basically, piloting in the Vietnam War created some of the most gear-destroying conditions imaginable. And so in these conditions, pilots frequently turned to the Glycine Airman. It was a phenomenally popular watch. By some accounts, it was more popular than all of the issued watches. It was marketed through the Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association as a pilot's tool watch, and in essence, that's exactly what it was. The appeal of the Airman is clear to see. It was the first watch to incorporate a 24-hour dial and have second time zone capabilities, two features that appeal to a military user in general, but especially the pilot. Fighter pilots back then, as they do today, track their movements in Greenwich Mean Time, not local. And this watch can read both. It also reads in 24-hour time, not 12, so the hour hand does one full rotation per 24-hour period, as opposed to the 12. Essentially, when your wing commander shouts out,
"Let's report to Accra and Kumasi at 0700 hours,"
then no head math needed. You just kind of take a glance at your watch. The watch is a stainless steel case, not all that common at the time, and this 36mm sloping case was specifically designed to keep a low profile to prevent tangles on gear and instruments. The models used during the Vietnam War were powered by an A-style 1903 movement, a low beam movement renowned for their ruggedness and their durability. It was incredibly accurate for the time. The crystal was made with acrylic, not quite as scratch resistant, but far less likely to shatter than glass.
The watch is anti-magnetic, and it has hacking capabilities through the addition of a tiny wire that jots up between the 24-hour marker when the time is being set.
And, critically, it's waterproof. I mean, I wouldn't go swimming in this thing, but it does say that it's waterproof. The dial here is where things get really different. We have this matte 24-hour dial, luminous hour markers for low light conditions, and big, broad arrow luminous hands that could be read even at a glance. The dual time zone functionality was achieved by the addition of this rotating bezel. The bezel features an additional 12 24-hour markers and can be locked in place at the 4 o'clock crown. It's an incredibly simple but ingenious way to solve the two time zone problem. It completely avoids the need to add any complications to the movement that would have compromised the low profile and rugged nature of this watch, especially given the capabilities of watchmaking at the time. The watch was available at PX shops throughout Southeast Asia, which is where most of the first-hand accounts of them being purchased are from. Overall, it's not hard to see why the Glycine Airman garnered such a reputation amongst pilots at the time and why it was so popular. It was what it said on the tin, a tool watch with pilot-specific functionality and dual time zone capabilities that literally didn't exist anywhere else on the market at the time. It also had the durability and the toughness to survive in an environment like this, whilst in the middle of a war zone. All told, the Americans flew more than 5.25 million sorties during the Vietnam War. That requires a lot of pilots, and Khe Sanh itself was home to one of the largest air operations of the entire war. On January 21st, 1968, the battle for Khe Sanh began. The North Vietnamese managed to destroy the main ammunition depot of the Marines here, destroying more than 1,500 tons of high explosive ammunition. That's about 98% of the available ammunition by scoring a direct hit on the main Marine ammunition depot. All resupply to Khe Sanh was going to have to be done by air. And to keep the base defended and resupplied, the Air Force and the Marine Tactical Air Force averaged more than 300 sorties per day. By the end of the siege, B-52s had flown more than 2,500 combat sorties, dropping almost 60,000 tons of bombs on North Vietnamese positions around here. Tactical aircraft dropped more than 40,000 tons of ordnance. And to keep the base going, pilots here flew just about everything from Cessna 01s to the state-of-the-art F-4s and a continuous stream of supply and transport aircraft. The most dangerous task fell to those piloting these bad boys whilst doing the resupply, the Lockheed C-130s. Actually, I have no idea what this is. You'd think there'd be like a plaque around here or something.
So it became a very, very big resupply problem.
We were out there in no man's land all alone.
Airlifters brought in an average of 250 tons of supplies per day. They brought in the supplies and they took out the wounded. They used cloud cover and real steep descents because as soon as the aircraft landed, well, they became the target of mortar fire and rocket explosion. And they did this until they lost enough aircraft, they just started dropping everything out of the planes instead of landing. They had to airdrop everything, and they used every method imaginable.
The Marines are forced to rely upon aerial drops for food, fuel, and most importantly, ammunition.
They used low-altitude parachute extraction systems and even ground proximity extraction, basically a giant hook attached to the cargo that would literally pull the stuff out of the plane. Any method to unload the aircraft with it barely touching the ground. And by the end of the siege, transports had completed 1,128 missions, delivering more than 12,000 tons of supply. You get the drift. This was a really tough job. The point behind all of this story here is twofold. One, you need a tough-ass watch for tough-ass conditions like those. And two, the pilots here were badasses, and so was this watch that they so frequently chose. The Airman was never issued. Instead, it was chosen because it was the ideal tool for the job. This was the pilot's watch. It came with the endorsement of both the Air Force and the AOPA, the ultimate pilot's tool watch of its time, tested in some of the most trying conditions imaginable. Personally, now I think it's kind of a forgotten gem, an icon in terms of innovation, progress, and cultural significance. It inspired an entire genre of dual time zone movements, some incredibly popular watches such as the Rolex GMT Master. And yet, mint conditions and vintage examples of these are still completely affordable today. If you're looking to build a vintage watch collection for under $1,500, then how can you go past the Glycine Airman? Unfortunately, after developing the Airman, the Glycine founder was murdered just a few years later, and then the company floundered during the quartz crisis, and now they're owned by Invicta. Man, that's some tough breaks. So the Airman really is Glycine's primary or only hit, and if it was me, I'd stick to just getting one of these OG models. Yes, the new models are apparently awesome value, but I would just completely avoid the Invicta stink and get something really vintage and cool. That is it for this video, guys. Thank you very much for watching. Please like and subscribe. Let me know what you think. If you agree or disagree with my take on the vintage Glycine Airman, let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.